Good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another edition of Thumbprint Conversation, where we are talking about why women write. Tonight, we'll talk to a woman who has written a provocative book on what is it like to be a mother in India. And so tonight we'll have Pooja Pande with us. Yeah. So herself, the author's daily job involves working with Khabar Lahariya. So hi, welcome Pooja Pande.
Hi, Teresa.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, and you can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can.
All right, great. Very, very excited to be here, and I should say honored actually to be here.
Thank you so much. And in fact, I'm really intrigued by your book, which is like, and being a mother myself, and it will be like two mothers talking and sharing our experiences. And
Sure.
and I'm also interested in your day job, which is working with Khabar Lahariya. Pooja, would you mind? There's a lot of noise. Is there a fan on or something in your room?
Oh yeah, there is a fan on.
Yeah, would you switch it off? Because
Sorry. Okay, so I'll come back, or should we restart?
no, that's fine. Just switch off the
Okay.
fan. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be back.
Yeah.
Is it better now, Teresa?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So let me introduce Pooja Pande to everyone. Pooja is a writer, editor, and a TED speaker who heads strategy at Khabar Lahariya. And as I said, Khabar Lahariya is an all-women rural newspaper where women journalists from Dalit, tribal, Muslim, and backward castes deliver groundbreaking stories from the rural hinterland. Pooja, there's a lot of noise on your end.
There's still a lot of noise?
Yeah. Yeah. Now I think it's better.
It's okay?
Now it's better.
Okay, maybe because the fan completely stopped now. Maybe it was the
Okay.
echo.
Okay. So, let me introduce Pooja to you again. She led First City as editor and is the co-author of Red Lipstick with Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi. And Pande's writing has appeared in various publications, including in The Wire, First Post, Vice, The Lady's Finger, Himal South Asian, and a short story in If Mom's Happy, an erotica anthology featuring moms. With her new book, Moms Speak, Penguin India, she has finally come to terms with her mother writer self and is now looking forward to birthing many more book babies. So welcome. And
Thank you.
there's still some noise. Okay, anyway. Okay, would you mind showing us your book? Do you have your book with you? Oh, you have a...
Well, times being what they are, it's only
okay.
an ebook right now.
Okay,
Although I've just heard that we should be seeing a paperback soon because things are kind of getting back to new normals. But yeah, for now, just the Kindle edition, Teresa.
Okay. So let's talk about Mom Speak. So why do you have a problem? I read somewhere that you have a problem with the term super mom. So
Yeah.
what is it that you're trying to challenge? What? why do you oppose the term super mom?
So before we get to that, since you spoke about me and gave an introduction, I'd just like to say, because people who've been following Teresa's work and your audience here and Why Women Write probably know you pretty well. But if there are people who are watching us right now who are not very familiar, unfortunate people who are not very familiar with Teresa's work, then she's a fabulous author and a journalist, specifically for her reporting in conflict areas, Jammu and Kashmir and the Northeast particularly. And she's won many, many acclaimed prizes. I don't even think I can remember them. But one of the most prestigious ones, the Ramnath Goenka Award, she's won it not once, but twice over. I've actually had the absolute privilege of working with Teresa as an editor on one of her books, of which she's authored many, called The Mothers of Manipur, which was a Zuban book. And also, she's recently written Bulletproof. Is it recent? Which is a
Yeah,
Penguin book,
yeah,
Teresa?
last
That's
year.
your last book.
Last year.
Last year. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's how Teresa and I also met while editing The Mothers of Manipur. And here we are talking about mothers. And I do feel that the revolutionary aspect of the movement, really, that Teresa's captured in The Mothers of Manipur. I mean, that book is fabulous for so many reasons. But I'd like to think that there was something that resonated with me even then, and as I made my journey towards Mom Speak, when I was working on your book. So coming to your question now, which is Mom Speak, my latest book, which is just out, just over, not even a month old now. It's a little baby right now. It's called Mom Speak, the funny bittersweet story of motherhood in India, published by Penguin this year. And about super moms, what you said. So really the idea of the book also kind of resonates with that, and I like to say that often because, like you said, provocative right at the beginning. And I think that to make change, the first step is kind of to provoke, really. And that is why the whole questioning around even super moms, which is supposed to be the ultimate compliment to all mothers, right? I mean, I have also basked in this glory of being called a super mom. But what it actually does is puts a lot of pressure on the mom, or the woman. Super women is also a term, and kind of takes away from the fact that she is also just a mom, or she's just a woman. I mean, that the mom in the super mom, the woman in the superwoman, gets overshadowed by the super hero ness of it. And that was kind of the idea. So it's a way of saying, she can do all these things because she's a super hero. That is why she can do all these 100 million things, this multitasking that we're always glorified for as women. But it's actually a way of saying, we should make sure we keep saying that so that she keeps doing it. And and the world turns and turns the way it always has. So specifically with that term, I would say that's basically the issue. And that's also kind of the impetus of Mom Speak, really trying to just question that in our culture.
You are now dealing with different kinds of imperfect moms, sort of, within quotes. So, what inspired you to write this book? You're talking about different kind of moms, and could you tell us more? And is it inspired by some life experiences or lived experiences? Would you just tell us what prompted you to write the book?
Yes, for sure. I think that with Mom Speak, I mean, it's really my kind of questioning, or rather realization before the questioning of the fact that we live in a pretty broken culture, and we don't do enough to question it. It's a culture we're all complicit in. I mean, all of us, myself included, and interrogation doesn't really happen. The thing about motherhood is, because it's in such a sacred space of its own in culture, this simply does not happen. There is no room for interrogation, and that is where the ugliest manifestations of this disturbing culture that we live in kind of then rear their ugly heads. And all of that. But I also feel, Teresa, that now it's been Mom Speak, it's been published like 1st of May. I've had some amount of processing of it. You'll be very familiar with this when your book comes out, and then if a month in, you kind of think about the space you're in and all of that. And I do realize that I'm able to articulate this now. I think that if I go back very, very honestly to the beginning of Mom Speak. I don't think I was thinking about it in such big picture ways. So it's, you're absolutely right. It's personal life experiences really that kind of were the
Mm-hmm.
the original impetus. And like very, very plainly put, it was my becoming a mother, and having had a few years of the experience of motherhood, being the mother to a daughter, in this broken culture that I mentioned, kind of made me think a little bit more about, what does it mean to be a mother, and do I continue to play this role that we are all supposedly supposed to play, like the super mom, for instance. And I think that's where the impetus came from. But knowing it was a book is so different, right? And this is again something you'll relate with. When do you know it's a book? Because I didn't really feel there was value in me sort of, doing some kind of memoir around motherhood. Like I feel that there are
Mm-hmm.
100 more motherhood experiences that are far more interesting, far more empowering, far more revolutionary than mine. So I did not really see the point of that. I think the book connected the idea that this could be a book is when I was able to kind of articulate for myself that these other experiences of motherhood that I'm calling more powerful, more empowering, more inspiring, how could I make them mine? Like, how could I um, maybe learn from these mothers or these motherhood experiences, have a conversation and see what it is that they are feeling. Are they feeling similar things? And what does that mean? So I think that's when the, like the penny dropped that, this is the book actually. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it's, it's my journey, but I'm navigating it through many, many experiences of mothers and motherhoods, and firmly set in this feminist kind of narrative or this lens, because that's something one was clear about, that we're going to question things here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that, and actually, that famous feminist mantra, the personal is political. It's really something that I understood only with Mom Speak. I mean, it's been too distant to for me to kind of really be able to get what that mantra means. I've
Mm-hmm.
really felt it with writing this book.
So as you said, you were called super mom. So I mean, you must have been very good in handling your kid and your home and your work. But for me, I think I was always known as a very, maybe I even wrote it in my book, Bulletproof, how, I had to negotiate my way as a woman in the field, working in a conflict-torn area, and then also, change diapers of my baby, So, and there were times when I was so engrossed in writing a story that I forgot to change my daughter's diapers, and then my sister rebuked me that you're not you're not being a good mother. So and there and the fact that a father can the parenting bit, the father can be a better parent as well, because for me, I think my husband has been a better parent than I was, so right from giving birth to the baby to taking care of, when I was not there, I just dump the kids and I used to go to the field. So yeah, there are different experiences, lived experiences, which maybe all mothers would have, or would like to share. uh, and then this whole how people look at a pregnant woman, or how they look at women with children. So as I was narrating, that when I was at the airport, like I had to go to Delhi when I was like 6 months pregnant, and then
To receive the Goenka award, right?
yeah, the Ramnath Goenka Award. So
Yeah.
I didn't want to miss it, but at the airport, the security guys were so suspicious. They wanted to check whether I was really pregnant. I was like, why did I have that big belly? So there are different kind of reactions to a pregnant woman, and maybe a mother with 2 3 children, and especially when you have to nurse the baby. In India, this is something which is like, there's the space to nurse your baby.
Yeah.
to breastfeed your baby. These are things which we really have to negotiate our way if we have to, work, and we have to take care of our kids. And I remember I used to go for my reporting. Sometimes I even drag my kids with me. So, so in that way, maybe I was not a perfect mom, but yeah, just trying to be
But
more.
this is what exactly I mean, Teresa. I mean, the fact that you are saying that this is a symbol of imperfect motherhood or something. And I should correct myself. I mean, I am not saying that I have been called super mom like for all 10 years that I've been a mother or something. Of course not.
Mm,
And I'm sure if I were to make a list of the amount of times I have neglected my daughter or chosen something over her or something, I'm pretty sure that list is long. Yeah. So
mhm,
I don't think that I think that is what I'm trying to question. That is that what the experience is about? That we can just judge all the various supposed flaws, but
mhm,
actually the flaw is in the culture. The fact that you think that, or you don't think, but I'm sure you've heard it. If your husband has been more hands-on, the fathers, if they are doing the parenting bit, are hands-on fathers, right? Whereas
mhm.
there's no hands-on mother, because
Yeah.
the mother is by default hands-on or something. Whereas this is the problem. But this is what I'm saying. This is the whole thing about attaching a gender to it. The fact
Mm,
that a woman
mm,
will be able to do this better, or somehow know this better, or it's expected of her. The fact that you were rebuked because you got engrossed in something and forgot to do something, is these are the expectations of mothers in our culture, which is absolutely what I think should like completely vanish right now. I mean, women should be and are slowly running the world now. And I mean, we can't keep rebuking them for not changing soily diapers. Yeah, I mean, come on.
mhm,
So I really want to get rid of this notion of imperfect mothers. There's really no such thing. Just like there are no super moms.
mm,
I honestly believe that there is no mother or father, for that matter, who
mhm,
would willfully do something wrong to their child. I mean,
mm,
unless there is a specific situation where
mhm,
people do have mental health issues, and that also is known to happen. But
mhm,
otherwise, I don't think that that is possible. That anybody does that willfully. So the rest is all cultural expectations, which are completely gender boxed.
mhm,
We just do everybody a disservice. I mean, this is not the space for it, but I also think a lot about the fathers and the dads who are not these typical kinds of, who are feminist fathers or feminist men. I mean, feminism isn't the prerogative of women and mothers, right? And often they find no space, right, to show their vulnerability, or to show their emotions towards the child, or to show that they have a passion that's equal, maybe greater than the mother's. But there is no room for that either, and that's again because culture doesn't give them the space to do that. So
mhm,
these are the things to question. I really think we should not, just like there should be no super moms, there should be no imperfect moms either.
mhm,
And
mhm,
I was frankly, Teresa, yesterday when we were talking about this, to let the audience know, Teresa shared this story with me about the harrowing experience she had at the airport while she was 6 or 7 months pregnant. And which is why I think right now I could keep a straight face, because yesterday I've already had that shocking reaction to it, which is that, I mean, this is completely unacceptable, right? The fact that you had to go through something like that.
mhm,
I mean, you're making this trip for a supreme achievement, that any man, woman would like, be completely thrilled about, and rightly so. And here you are having to explain yourself in this, kind of pigeonholed into this very biological corner, right? As to explain yourself because you are 6 months pregnant. I mean, this is unacceptable, and this is again culture, because culture is infrastructure,
mhm,
not being able to have spaces where you can nurse your baby, like you said,
mhm.
and having to explain to a security guy who thinks it's funny that there is a big woman coming in for her security check. I mean, yeah. So please don't call yourself an imperfect mother, Teresa.
No. Mm. And would you like to read out something which explains in the things that you've said just now? So because I haven't read your book, so I just would love to
Yeah.
hear something. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've chosen something for us that I thought would work, which is from the introduction actually, and I thought it would work because it kind of gives you a kind of an overview.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, here goes. The idea of becoming a mother is one of the most revered ideas for us humans as a race in general, but especially pronounced for our culture, brought up as we are on a steady diet of myth making fueled by folklore, the media, Bollywood, gossip, over concerned family structures, and of course, neighbors. It goes on an unhealthy overdrive from time to time. I have never felt as much love as I felt in the moment when the doctor placed you in my arms. We are told as children. And oh, you forget the pain the minute you see your baby's face, we hear as teenagers veering close to the ripe breeding age. And oh, you will never understand what I go through, not until you become a mother yourself. That killer non sequitur, often delivered during our 20s, when we're out late and our mothers are allegedly spending anxious evenings at home. All of this basically contributes to building the idea of the mother, this almost otherworldly creature who exists in a realm beyond mere physical pain when it comes to her children. She sets aside all her personal needs, also known as getting a life, if they seemingly clash with those of her child who has an active life. She's semi divine, if not divine altogether, a compellingly hallowed idea. But what about that flesh and blood woman whose flesh and blood created this child in the first place? Where are the burning debates about and around her? To quote Brenda Clews, the chatter of mothers sharing the work of raising the world is not in the texts. It is banished from the canon. It is another discourse hidden from the acts of cultural memory. It is not found in important conversation. I think I'll pause here just to resonate with Teresa. Why I immediately also wanted to come onto this session is because of the fabulous title you have of Why Women Write. I mean, it is so simple and so beautiful because it captures so much in those three words, the complexity of it. Because again and again we see this, and I put up this quote earlier today in anticipation of this session of how if women were writing, there would be a completely revised history, right? So, as the original subaltern voice, I mean, you are a specialist in bringing out subaltern voices, recognize this so well that the narratives we have come from powerful structures, right? And have come from places of power. Those are the stories we know. For when I was writing the chapter on the birthing, I was trying to find some, high flown literary metaphor for the pain, that the woman undergoes, the physical pain. And you won't believe it, but, or maybe you will, I could not find it. And I realized that it's not been given the space of literature, right? I mean, we have only ever seen it in either these melodramatic kind of, cinematic representations, where the women is screaming and whatever, or we have seen it in these very pop culture ways where there's a lot of humor around, right? The woman delivering, give me my epidural, da da da, that kind of stuff. I mean, we haven't seen realistic portrayals of it that have managed to capture it. And I realized that this gaping gap is in every aspect of the woman's experience, of the mother's experience. And it's because women have not been writing about it, or mothers have not been saying these things out loud or documenting them. And yeah, which is why this really struck me, that it's just not considered important conversation. And it's not considered important conversation because it doesn't concern men. And men have been doing all the important conversations supposedly so far, and been running the world, and look where we are today with that, after centuries of that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I could kind of go on with this because I saw it everywhere. I saw it in research. When I was trying to research, I can't remember what it was, many kinds of things, scientific research. I read many papers like that. And I realized that there isn't that much research about breast milk, for instance, and the composition of breast milk, which is very, very, it's a very interesting, fascinating, and complex subject because it's not every woman has a different composition of breast milk, right? And this is a very highly understudied subject. And I have this line in my book where I say we know more about erectile dysfunction than we know about breast milk. And again, I mean, no prizes for guessing why, right? Because erectile dysfunction is a problem of those who want to fund that research, right? So that's the research that gets funded. Um, so this is everywhere, like you said, with infrastructure. It's everywhere. Yesterday we were discussing the medical fraternity
Mm.
and how the cultural biases are there as well, so strongly, right? It's almost as if once the child is out, the woman ceases to exist, ceases to matter. That's also in the
Mm.
medical fraternity. And again, you were sharing something yesterday about that as well. And so yeah, I mean, this is like all these horrible symptoms of this, like the
Mm.
real virus that's
Mm.
not corona.
Yeah, that's what I was discussing yesterday. That when all our public health policies regarding women is centered around motherhood, motherhood and childbirth, and
Yeah, yeah,
after that, and what if she's not a mother, or what are the other, what about the other gynecological conditions that she might suffer
absolutely.
from?
Yeah,
We hardly discuss all this. It's just
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And these ASHA workers, I mean, they are also
yeah.
they are doing a commendable job. And in fact, I've done a series on these ASHA workers, because I remember
Mm-hmm,
we're
mm-hmm.
talking about motherhood. So I've done a series on how they are working in the tea gardens of Assam or the riverine areas of Assam. And their job begins with the fact that the woman is pregnant, and then till the childbirth and till the immunization, and mother and child. But
Hmm.
what about the
Yeah,
other gynecological conditions of women? So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
uh, gynecology also, I think, has been restricted to this whole thing about motherhood and childbirth. The other conditions like endometriosis, adenomyosis, we don't talk about all these very painful ailments
yeah,
which women suffer from.
yeah,
Even I've been suffering from. In fact, endometriosis has stalled my life. It's such a painful condition. But yes, cervical cancer, breast
yeah,
cancer, we don't talk about all this. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't
Because
know.
they're not in this hallowed
uh,
aura of mothers and motherhood, right?
Maybe,
There's
yeah.
nothing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not given importance. Absolutely.
Hmm. So now we just come back to your job as as a heading strategy at
Yes,
Khabar Lahariya. So,
yes,
so you work with these women who have been producing, groundbreaking reportage from the hinterlands of rural India, and when while working with these women, uh, uh, what have you learned about this issue about motherhood, about and I feel when you live in a village, you or in a community, because we urban women, we live very insular lives. For me,
absolutely.
my baby was the first baby I held in my arms. I never held a baby before, but I've seen but if you grow up in a village, you're always taking care of some baby somewhere, and you know how to handle a baby, and many other things about your maternal health. And I don't know, maybe somehow I feel they are more privileged, and they know more about motherhood, and they know more about taking care of their body and taking care of the child. So has your experience been different while dealing with women from uh, and especially these enterprising women who have been doing groundbreaking stories?
Yeah, yeah. A couple of things there. One is that I think when you asked about mom speak impulse, I think Khabar Lahariya is kind of closely linked to Mom Speak Impulse for me.
Hmm.
If I were to, because I've also worked as an editor for so many years and still do now to some extent, I'm like able to map like my own kind of arc to going from like First City, which was this independent culture magazine where we were kind of looking at the big questions of life. Through the lens of culture, and that was my writing school. That's basically what it was. And going from there to red lipstick, and then red lipstick and Khabar Lahariya kind of coincided. So now when I see motherhood happen, my this realization of or navigation of feminism kind of happened around that time for me personally. and then kind of owning it. Uh, and Khabar Lahariya was also hence something I was drawn to. And Mom Speak really has and being with the women that you're talking about really firmed that up for me strongly. And it's not just motherhood. So again, if we look at motherhood as like a creative impulse, which again I think something would resonate with you. Why bring a child into this world? Part of the answer is that it is a bit of a creative drive, right? Uh, this shaping of a consciousness or this shaping of a human being is something that appeals to the creative person inside you, right? So with Khabar Lahariya, which resonates very much again with why women write. I keep coming back to your series name, but because Khabar Lahariya started as a newspaper and literally, and the precursor was a broadsheet really that came out of a neo-literacy program and women wanting to read more and study more. So it actually started with them writing, so women writing, and for the first time, for instance, the editor, who's Kavita, who's the editor today, has this really powerful story, which is now immortalized in a TED talk, where she talks about how when she would come back from this new literacy program, she would write because she just learned how to write her name, her father's name, the village's name, and all of that. She would come back and write it in the atta, the sukha atta while she was making rotis. She would come back and write it in the mud. And this really struck me as an image, because that is when that revolution started, I feel. I mean, personally for her also, but for all the women of Khabar Lahariya. When you knew that you could shape something, when you could, write, when you could give meaning to your world and give meaning to, in the case of Khabar Lahariya, since it's news and views and grassroots reporting, so give voice to the voiceless, really. And you're able to do that. Suddenly you have that power with the pen and paper, and now that it's fully digital, you're writing in the digital space, so to speak. But what I learned from them, I was trying to, sorry, it's a very long-winded answer to
No,
your
no,
question,
no,
but I was
that's fine. That's fine. Huh.
trying to kind of map my own journey there also, with not just the women who are mothers in the more conventional sense, and the way you're talking about them being around children and that sense of community. So not just biological mothers, but just this creative impulse and this drive and this kind of fire in your belly to fix something, to make something right, to give voice to those who don't have one, to feel that power, give that power to the disempowered, is something that strengthened my resolve to write, actually, to write a book, because it gave faith back, sort of, in a way, to that there is a point in putting this down, in having this published, in reaching out to people, whoever they might be, whatever the number is, but you need to do this. Like that really resonated with me. In terms of learnings, Teresa, I could go on. I mean, I think I learn from them. I don't think a day goes by when you're not learning. I mean, for instance, right now they're all field reporters, right? So they're all in the field in the North Indian hinterland, and Khabar Lahariya reports from media dark geography. So these are places that you don't see in mainstream narratives, in the newspapers, in digital media. I mean, Banda, Mahoba, Chitrakoot, Hamirpur, Tikamgarh. These are the kind of districts that they're in. You rarely hear these names. One of them is now apparently part of a big show and has suddenly made that district on the map, put that district on the map, but less said about that, the better for now. But these women are out there every day, and in these days and times, it's even more dangerous because they're frontline workers. They're risking exposure all the time, and they are such extremely creative in their in everything, like if even something like technology, right? So you could be in a village where there isn't internet and you have to file a story, and this, if you have to file a story, you have to file a story, right? The editor is waiting for it. You'll find a way. I mean, it's mind-boggling, really, as to how this happens every day. So it's like a combination of hacks. You have these hacks that you put to use. You hustle your way around and make sure the job gets done. Uh, um, like any other reporter, I mean, this is something that you would know so well. And as a woman, I'm sure you felt this again in conflict areas, especially where how information is kept from you, right? As a woman reporter, how you are not taken as seriously as your male peers, and there are spaces you're not allowed into because those are male spaces. So these things which we have all maybe felt and lines of reporting and doing such path breaking work. But like you rightly said, we're still in that urban privilege space. For these women to be doing it, and to be standing next to their male peers and ensuring that access and that same information and is quite, I mean, it's beyond inspiring. It's like, yeah, puts everything into perspective, I feel. So it's really that creative perspective. I think it's really that creative urge, which is to write, to find hacks around it, to hustle your way around it, to do whatever it takes to kind of shake this up, disrupt the powers that be, and ask the questions. So it's not just in their motherhood, is what I'm saying. Even women who are not mothers have this, which is why I was trying to answer it as a motherhood as a creative impulse rather than a actual biological truth. Yeah.
And you had also co-authored the book Red Lipstick, The Men in My Life. Please tell us more about this book.
Yeah, Red Lipstick is a literary style memoir, I would say, of Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi, who's this transgender rights activist. And so to map my journey, like I was saying, I think becoming a mother, the experience, realizing that, from someone who didn't really get feminism or never thought it had much space or didn't really give it much thought. I had never personally felt any kind of prejudice, gender related or otherwise, in my own life. And it took becoming a mother, I think, to realize how lucky I was that hadn't happened to me till almost like 3 decades of my life. I had not encountered it. I encountered it when I started seeing it as the mother of this daughter who had to suddenly navigate this world that was suddenly to me seeming like not very nice, and all the fault lines were getting exposed. I think it's a bit like a crisis situation. I mean, now that I'm saying it, COVID-19 has kind of exposed the fault lines of our system and how fractured they are and how they are completely screwed up. I mean, meant for the powerful, built for the powerful. And if you are not, and if you're marginalized, and if you're vulnerable, the system does not give a damn. Like, we can see that like now so starkly exposed, right? So I think it takes that kind of churning, earth shaking kind of thing to happen to you to see the fault lines. And for me, that was motherhood, to see the fault lines of our culture in this, especially this very skewed gender way that it exists. So I think that was a slow process, and Red Lipstick kind of happened in the early years of motherhood. I think I was drawn to Lakshmi also because of that, because it was really, for me personally and creatively, this kind of way of engaging with the question of gender and the fluidity of gender, which Lakshmi personifies, right? I mean, I don't know if you've met her or if she's
Yeah, I've met her.
she's
Yeah.
yeah, so she's larger than life, right? I mean, that is her persona, and she kind of plays that also, and very, very dynamic and extremely attractive, right? That she has that energy and aura around her. So it really became for me that kind of space to try and see it through Lakshmi, who kind of personifies, embodies, really, literally in her body, she embodies the gender fluidity. So for me, that was kind of the thing to take that on as a project. And yeah, the book itself is about the men in her life. It's written it in her voice. So the men in her life, from her father to her friends, her lovers, peers, colleagues, brothers, yeah, the children. She's also a mother in some sense to many, many men in her life. Today, of course, she's a ma in a different sense. She's spiritual leader of a Kinder cult.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Red Lipstick for me was that, and I'm glad that I was able to. It kind of egged me on towards this journey with feminism and in feminism, and really embracing this identity, which then Khabar Lahariya just absolutely, I think, crystallized for me.
Mm-hmm. So, this whole thing about when you talk about motherhood, again, coming back to motherhood, did you also
Yeah.
address the mental health or, mental health issues around the concepts of motherhood? Did you address that in your book?
Yeah, I have. So, yeah, I mean, all through there are, I would say, two particular chapters. So first, just to address the mental health issue, I feel again it comes a lot from mothers not having that space to kind of
Mm.
acknowledge that this experience is, I mean, I keep saying it's life altering and life affirming, and I go back to these two kind of descriptions of motherhood because I think the life altering part of it is not given much space for conversation. What I'm talking about it not being important enough to be or is given space only in supposedly positive ways. There is no room for dissonance there. So it's life altering, but only in the best of ways. Who in the right minds would not want to be a mother, or so there is no other room to talk about it except in that kind of space. And that is what leads to so much disruption, right? Because we don't like to complicate the idea of the mother in our culture at all. We don't like our grays in it at all. So she has to be this kind of perfect, I don't know, whatever, super moms, we can call them whatever you want to call them. Like, there is no room for her having a bad day or for her having um, feelings, desires, ambitions like anybody else, right? I mean, it's almost like she could be anybody as a woman, but once she's a mother, she's this template of the mother, right? Whereas just as there are a million kinds of women, there can be a million kinds of mothers. That's logical, but that's not entirely how it's seen. And that is where I think mental health issues come up. That is where the stress starts to show, because that isn't possible if you're an X kind of woman to suddenly, become this one template of a mother, which is just not you. It's like that round hole square peg problem, right? It'll never fit, and the strain will be there to show. Um, so I feel that yeah, so specifically the issue I've tackled in two chapters, yes, of my book. One is when I've looked at the stress that the new mother goes through, which is just when the baby's born, in the first few weeks or the first few months, which, if you remember, is a pretty harrowing time for a mother,
Mm.
because there are just many things that she has to be. A lot of things are going on which are not talked about, basically, and she herself has not acknowledged them, I feel, because she's not in that space mind frame to acknowledge them. And again, there's a silence around it in our culture, right? I mean, something I realized only when I was going through those. I mean, not then, I didn't realize it. When I was, for the purposes of this book, when I was looking back at my time, then I realized that there's an absolute silence around it. Like, the fact that you can feel extremely dark, you can be extremely depressed, you could be and all that is documented, and that, it's not something that's only happening to you. It's very off the course. It's not something that's ever talked about, right? Like, your own mothers have never discussed it, or your doctors don't talk about it, and you're just supposed to kind of deal with it. And there's so much guilt that comes with feeling that way also, because you've supposedly, have this now fabulous new person that, everybody has been waiting for, and but suddenly you are not really feeling all that great.
Mm.
So that kind of those that feeling I've captured with in that book, in this chapter called
Mm.
Brand New Mommy,
Would you like to
Baby
read out?
Blues in No Dating. Oh, from that.
Yeah. Would you like to read out something?
Um, okay, I could
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. One sec.
Sure. Okay.
Mm.
The reality of the brand new mum sounds shinier than it is in sharp contrast to the idea of the mother that had been running in your head thus far, like a super successful pop song on loop. The life that gives meaning to the motherhood, the one you gave life to, is now an ever present presence in this equation, and somehow you're not exactly sure this math is working out so good. Nothing and nobody ever spells this out for you in the way it should be. That this is a time when you're bound to feel helpless, lonely, desperate. Affirmation feels far away on the horizon, and even as you hold the baby, this fragile life so dependent on you, it takes everything you have to feel a little less helpless, lonely, desperate. Although gazillions of women go through it worldwide and your intellect understands that, you cannot completely process it. You're convinced you're on a solitary journey with your baby, a journey that seems to have no purpose and no clear destination in sight. Any number of well meaning people don't help because nobody else really gets it. Suddenly, you're longing for time to turn back to the 9 months of pregnancy, to the labor pains, the birth, everything that signaled the end of something tumultuous and the start of something epic. Or so you thought. The wide eyed flutters of expectations have turned into something less pretty. Paranoia and depression are now your new bedfellows, except you're rarely in bed. Or to qualify, you're rarely ever in bed sleeping. If you do happen to fall asleep, that much celebrated protective instinct comes to torment you. All those new mother nightmares of having drowned the baby or accidentally suffocated it have strong links, we know now, from proven research studies to our primeval souls. A helpless infant was easy prey after all when we were hunters and gatherers. Drowning, suffocating were extremely plausible outcomes, as was getting eaten by a wolf. You feel tried and tested and stretched in every possible way. Life has taken on grey existential hues that seem to render even Sisyphus's boulder pushing up the mountain so meaningful. Nursing is no longer the very portrait of a benign Madonna painting you were made to believe, and it turns out it's a skill you don't have the training for. Seeing how your breasts have never squirted milk before, it seems they need to be taught, as does the baby. Poor baby, one supremely intimidating pediatrician had said to me, turning to glare at me sternly. Why haven't you taught her the right way to suckle? The possible responses to that question are now so ready in my brain, like a multiple choice exam sheet. But back then, she became the star of my nightmares for months together. Your body, the central site of nurturing for this life you have created, had been sufficient so far. Why is it failing you now? Why is it not doing what it's meant to do? Never does it gnaw at your soul like it does then. Guilt. Cuts to the bone, nerve wracking, soul gnawing guilt. The depths of which you'll be plummeting into and hardly ever surfacing from. So yeah, I mean, mental health issues for
Yeah.
sure.
So, in fact, you had raised an important point when you said that doctors don't talk about a lot of other things. They just like deliver the baby and you go back, go. So
Yeah, what you were sharing yesterday, right?
yeah,
About the doctor
so
just not being interested in any other kind of problem that a woman could.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
or whatever, go back home and how to take care of your any kind of postpartum depression or any kind of mental health
Yeah.
issues that might you'd be stressed. So they will not tell you all these things. You just everything is nowadays everything revolves around the cesarean, that much sought after cesarean, and then it's a package deal and you deliver the baby and go back home and do whatever you want to. So even the pediatrician doesn't say much about, once I remember my pediatrician told me that because I was having problems breastfeeding the baby. So he said that, breastfeeding is a psychological thing. If you think positive, if you think that there is, this whole thing is very psychological, the whole breastfeeding thing. So that is something
Yeah,
which
it's
was
linked to
like,
stress, right?
yeah,
It's
so
linked to stress.
quite a
Yeah.
revelation for me. I was quite,
Hmm.
nobody ever had told me that. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in fact, I just wanted to read out one small bit from my book, Bulletproof, where
Please.
I speak about, I'm going to meet two former militants of the
Okay.
ULFA, United Liberation Front of Assam. And since I'm going out, and I'll just read out the beginning of the chapter where I talk about my daughters. So we agreed to meet at a coffee shop in Guwahati. For me, it is as good as going on a blind date. I'm a little uneasy. I'm a little uneasy. It is drizzling outside, and I don't like to slosh around in puddles. And there are endless cliches about Guwahati's potholes, especially during monsoon. Time is ticking away. My elder daughter is absorbed in her two-story doll's house and the make-believe family that lives in it. She has given every doll in the house a name and is ready to give a tour of her doll house every time we have a guest. The younger one is fast asleep in her cot. I tell her that I'll be back soon. She nods and gets busy with her dolls as I walk out of the house. Journalism has split my life into several parallel streams: mother, homemaker, and a storyteller. My daughter is used to a mother who walks out in a jiffy, then comes back and drowns herself in her laptop. The younger one is too young to notice. My sister finds it annoying when I sometimes forget to change her diaper for hours or give her a bath when I'm too engrossed in work. So this is something which I just wanted to read out of motherhood
Yes,
and
I'm.
from Bulletproof.
Is,
Yeah.
is, is there more? Because I also haven't read this one. We haven't read these books of each other, so I'm going to read it now.
Yeah.
There's more of your sharing as
Yeah,
a
yeah.
mother.
Yeah, because I'm like taking them along with me. I go to meet some
Yeah, yeah.
poachers. So I take my daughter with me, and she gets scared when she sees him, and
Oh,
holds her in his lap, and then gives her a chocolate.
oh
So
wow.
so these are things which, and basically the book
Yeah.
Bulletproof is about I call this bulletproof because I'm trying to say that because once somebody had asked me, one journalist had asked me that, do you wear a bulletproof jacket when you go reporting? So these are things
Hmm.
which are
Haha.
unheard of,
Yeah.
especially when you are reporting from a remote area and
Yeah,
underreported
yeah.
area like northeast of India. And so basically, I'm trying to say that we are bulletproof. Many of us journalists like us, So so
Right,
then
right.
again, you're a mother, and then I remember I had done a story where I had to face some legal hassles, and I was questioned by the Judicial Commission, SIT, CBI. So I was heavily pregnant then. So I was sitting there, I was trying to hide my tummy when I was being, interrogated and questioned.
Wow.
So, and I was all alone. So these are things which, you are
Yeah, yeah,
also
yeah.
you're also a mother, and you're also doing certain things which,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Motherhood under duress is what you've kind of you faced it a lot more.
uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
And so your book has covered a whole spectrum of experiences, and
Yes.
you can be a mother even if you're not a woman. So what are the other kind of mothers you talked about? Can you tell us something?
Yeah, so sure, of course. To link back to what I was saying about feeling that just my story would like not be something that I would want to write,
Hmm.
and if I'm not interested to read it, like who else would be kind of feeling that. So then feeling then what does it mean to look at the spectrum of mothers and more empowering, inspiring, affirmative experiences of motherhood, which are life altering and life affirming, but for all the reasons. Like I wanted to show it for all the reasons and rip the halo around it. Which actually then became like a game. I mean, because if you strip away the biology, gender
Hmm.
of it, then things just become much clearer. So when I was mapping the kind of interviews I wanted to do, I it I knew that I would cover a spectrum of women and motherhood experiences who were kind of, it's like showing the middle finger to this whole haloed, holier than thou kind of experience. So whether it be, so there are single moms, divorced moms, there are non-biological moms. In fact, the Khabar Lahariya editor I mentioned is one of the non-biological moms
Oh.
in my book. And queer moms, I was very, very interested. So there is a same-sex couple who are now both mothers to twins, and one is mama and one is mom. And who else? There are all the mainstream kind of narratives. I mean, I spoke to moms who are, for instance, what corporate, billion-dollar deals every day kind of a life. What does it mean? What is the motherhood experience like for her? And now that we know all these conversations that are happening, since our world runs on capitalism and understands capitalism, the kind of change making that hits at the heart of everything often comes from these spaces. So I felt that that was important to capture what the kind of more maverick women in this world were up to, and it was very interesting that they are now showing the way ahead in some sense. You know, from the more famous kind of women who I did not interview, but who I refer to in this because I studied them for this book, like Indra Nui or Sheryl Sandberg, to kind of see that these were women who were talking about Anne Marie Slaughter, who I absolutely love, who are talking about the vulnerabilities of motherhood and how by being vulnerable, we're not necessarily saying being weak. I mean, it's often associated with a sign of weakness and hence a sign of bad mom. Uh, but this embracing of the woman in the mother, or this embracing of the mom in the supposed super mom. So those narratives are in there as well, and a lot of research. So the book has a lot of referring to the canonical kind of texts that have been prescriptive for women through the ages. So it's the Naryank and Manusmriti and some amount of mythology studying. Also, I've looked at Sita
What?
as perhaps the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
single mom,
Okay.
uh, because when she comes back and she's asked to kind of leave because she fails the purity test,
Hmm.
she pretty much raises her sons on her own, right? And she does that in the complete backdrop of this whole big epic about the ideal man. She's doing that completely in the backdrop. She goes off into the woods and she
Hmm.
raises them there. So there are some very interesting retellings of that phase of her life, which I studied, which I found very fascinating
Have you
for
mentioned
for
that
this
in
book.
your book? Are they
Yes, I
mentioned?
have.
Would you like to read out some bits from this whole
I can
mythology?
just tell you I
Ah,
can just
okay.
tell you about the Sita
Okay.
story because I think that that's something you would also be interested in. So just the fact that her motherhood kind of happens backstage. It doesn't happen in the grand epic thing of coming back and the homecoming and the exile and the story about the ideal man and his ideal wife and all of that. And there is one very interesting story I encountered where Sita is living in the woods, and the twins are growing up, and she meets Surpanakha
Hmm.
after many, many years. So after that episode, the famous episode in the epic, she meets her, and Surpanakha is like seething over the humiliation even to date. Like when she meets Sita, she keeps on talking about that and how so Sita feels that she's still not gotten over it. So she counsels her and she tells her that how can Ram and Ravan and all these men still be affecting your life? Why are they still running your life? The fact that you
Hmm.
are
Hmm.
feeling so bad because these men behaved in not so amazing ways or dishonorable ways. You are in nature, enjoy nature, and see this is the ultimate truth. Nature is the ultimate truth. And these men, they come and go, like forget about them, so I just thought that was really amazing, and for me I took that as a thing of um, it was Sita the mother who was able to like kind of see this truth about life, which Sita the wife
Hmm.
could not ever, because she was kind of too busy playing the role of the ideal wife and the certain template that it had in. But once she failed the purity test, she was out of society, shunned by society.
Hmm.
So she was free to kind of, live her life liberated. And I think that made her so evolved as to be able to counsel Surpanakha then to say that, look at the big picture. Yeah? I mean, these men anyway are like screwing up everything. Forget it. And nature is ever present. Nature is eternal. So revel in that, and again the fact that motherhood is also nature, and being a mother is part of nature in that sense. So that was one of the really fascinating stories that I just stumbled upon, and I thought that I made it my kind of truth about motherhood to use. This is what I meant, that I kind of wondered how could I make these narratives my own. So when I'm talking about Kavita of Khabar Lahariya, or this CFO who runs the billion-dollar deals, or this queer mom, you know, who has a lesbian partner and they now have these twins, or a single mom who's kind of walked out of a toxic marriage and now brings up her son on her own son. Because, you know, to quote her, she says, you know, we need to make sure the coming generation of men are not assholes. That's how she put it.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of also looking at then the women in the canon who you know, are the stories that we've grown up with. So
Mm-hmm.
be it Sita, for instance, who's one of the most, she's always been sold as this ideal kind of, you know, picture. But I realized that there isn't much about her motherhood, so it would be interesting if I could find something there. So then, yeah, really then trying to like make these narratives my own. Like I was always very clear about being able to bring out a feminist statement out of all of these experiences.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
So,
yeah.
yeah, so I think we should all will order your book once it's out on in paperback. I'm yet not.
Yes, for those for those of us who are more old school, I'm also like,
Yeah.
I shouldn't be saying this, but you like to feel the book in your hands. But until then, I've just started on the Kindle, and I want to say it's not. I'm warming up to it, so it's not a bad experience if you want to give it a shot for Mom's Peak.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about, say, you've been also an editor, you have been now you are handling strategy with Khabar Lahariya. So, why do you think women write or women don't write? Or why do you think women don't write?
Um, well, I suppose women don't write because it's really, really tough. It's like a fight to to be writing. You feel that you have to explain yourself to be writing. I think just that simple story you shared, I think, said so much about you being lost in a story and being reprimanded for being a bad mother. You know, and yet you write, but it's not easy, right? I mean, um, even when you hear this, nobody likes to hear that they're not taking care of the children because, like I said, you're doing your best by your children. Um, so yeah, I just think it's really, really difficult, and it takes a lot of too much of you. It takes a lot of resilience, a lot of tenacity, a lot of being very sure about wanting to push back and fight back. Um, yeah, it's just that much. It's just that much easier for those whose voices are recognized as being legitimate, you know, carriers of the canon and the tradition. So yeah, I think that that's why women don't write. But having said that, I think that this has always been. I mean, if you read the writings of Virginia Woolf, and as a great example of someone who was dealing with so much mental torture, really, while she was, and yet she was writing, and how difficult it was for her to do that. um, or if you think about just expression, like the mothers of Manipur that you write about, you know, the fact that they are the bearers of this revolution again on their body. It's such a physical truth that they portray in that revolution and your book. But it's not easy, right? I think that creative impulses are just always very, very, they give you sleepless nights basically. So it's just not ever ever
Mhm.
ever ever easy, and yet we do it, and yet we must do it.
So, Pooja, I think your book will provoke many new thoughts and ideas, and we'd all look forward to reading it and having even more discourse around motherhood and the changing perspectives around motherhood and how. And I think if any of our readers would like to, or viewers would like to ask any questions, they can always get in touch with Pooja. Uh, and yes, I wish you all the best for your book and
Thank you so much,
all the
Teresa.
best for handling strategy at Khabar Lahariya. I really commend you for handling this. You know, it's like something which I would always love to come and see how these women work. So
Oh wow, please do. I mean, you'll
yeah,
love it. You'll
yeah,
absolutely love it.
yeah. I've
Yeah.
heard so much about Khabar Lahariya, and I would really want to work on come and meet these women once. So, so I think we are running out of time. It's almost an
Yeah.
hour. So, have a good night. Thank you so much, Pooja, for telling us, sharing
Thanks so
your
much,
story.
Teresa.
Thank you so
It was so
much.
wonderful talking to you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. All right. Bye. Good night.
Good night.